All right, for this problem in the top left, we're going to start out by constructing a bar chart for this data. So all we really need to do for a bar chart is create a graph. And depending on the context, you might want to sort the data in some way, but you don't have to. But all we need to do for our bar chart is represent every one of our suppliers here. And then we have, on our y-axis, the number of barrels in millions. And we're just labeling this as country imports. And then we just look at our data. We see Saudi Arabia is at 629. So you need to draw a very odd looking bar for sure, 629-ish. So that will be Saudi Arabia. Now, if you wanted to, you can make the bars touch, but for the most part, you don't need to, and it's pretty conventional not to make the bars touch when you do a proper bar graph. Then we look at Nigeria is at 306, so we're going to go up here to about 306. Kuwait is at 75. Canada is at 565, so somewhere above 550, somewhere around here. You know, Salcon will mess up his illustrations every once in a while, and he'll be like, I can do better than that. And then he'll redo it. I can't do better than that. That's about as good as I can get. All right, so for the United Kingdom, we have about 127, so somewhere in the middle here. Venezuela is 439. Iraq is 171. Mexico is 580. Mexico is 580, so somewhere around here. Angola is 132. And then Norway is at 60, so just a little bit over 50. And that's all we need to do for our bar graph. And here's the exact same graph I just drew, but using graph paper, so you can see how much, cleaner it is, especially when you have a ruler and, lines to tell you how to draw. And what you could tell just from looking at the graph is that Saudi Arabia, Canada, and Venezuela and Mexico definitely make up a large chunk of all the overall data. And that's kind of what a bar graph is good for. It kind of illustrates, how much more Saudi Arabia is importing versus Nigeria. You're putting them right next to each other, and you can visually see immediately the difference. Now, the next thing it asks us to do is to do a dot plot, and I don't like this example at all, to be honest with you. Normally, when you do a dot plot, you'll have some data. You'll have something like, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 1, 3, 2, 7, 6, 3, 4. And then when you actually draw out your dot plot, you're just going to make it, let's see, 0. Our smallest value is going to be 1. Then we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then for every piece of data we have, we're going to have a dot. So for 2, we're just going to go ahead and put a dot right here. For 3, we're going to go ahead and put a dot right here. For 4, we're going to put a dot here. For 3, we're going to put another dot right on top of it. 1, we're going to put a dot right here. 3, we're going to put a dot right here. 2, we're going to put a dot right here. 7, we're going to put a dot all the way over here. 6, we're going to put a dot right here. 3, again, we're going to put a dot on top of here. And then 4, we're going to put a dot on here. And what a dot plot does really well is kind of show where all the central distribution is. Like you can tell just from looking at it that most of our points are around this area right here. And you can kind of almost imagine kind of a curve going on here to kind of display what's going on. And that is when you want to use a dot plot. The reason I don't like the example they give us, you'll see, we'll go ahead and, plot it out. But our range here is going to be from, 0 all the way up to maybe 650. And what we're going to do is the exact same thing. We're going to put a dot on here for every single point we have here. So here we can see Saudi Arabia is 629. So that'll be somewhere around, here. Then we have Nigeria, which is 306. That'll be somewhere around here. Kuwait is 75, somewhere around here. Canada is 565. That'll be about here. United Kingdom is 127. So somewhere around here. Venezuela is 439. Iraq is 171. Mexico is 580. Angola is 132. Norway is 60. And I don't want to put it directly on top, so I'm going to draw it here a little bit to the left. And that is our whole dot plot. Now, I don't really like this because it's kind of one-dimensional. We don't have any dots that we can, stack on top of each other here. And that's mainly because, the values are so big that it's highly unlikely that they would have, 2 instances of 306. But we can still see the same idea here where most of the distribution is kind of happening on this end here. And then there's also some distribution going on this side here, but for the most part it's very spread out. So when you look at a dot plot, you can't really tell much information about the suppliers themselves, right? You can't really tell, oh, Saudi Arabia was here or was it over here? You don't know. All we have are a bunch of dots and, a bunch of numeric points, unless we were to actually go through and label all of them. But what we can tell is that the majority of our data kind of falls in here. So, dot plots and bar graphs do different things, and they have different purposes and meanings. Neither is right, neither is wrong, but what kind of information are you looking for? Do you want to know where most of your data falls, or do you want to know how Saudi Arabia compares to Kuwait? Knowing that, hopefully we can answer number C. Suppose that the countries marked by an asterisk are OPEC countries, and compare the crude oil amounts supplied by OPEC and non-OPEC countries using the appropriate graph. So we want to compare, OPEC countries versus non-OPEC countries. Which would be a better graph to use? Well, we wouldn't want to use a dot plot. We would really just have two different dots, right? One here, and it's not going to tell us anything about OPEC versus non-OPEC. So what we would rather do is use a bar chart. But the first thing we need to do in order to do that, we need to add up all of the values. So for OPEC countries are the ones with the star, right? So that would be 629 plus 306 plus 75 plus 439 plus 171, and all that adds up to be 1620. Then we want to look at the non-OPEC countries, which is going to be 565 plus 127 plus 580 plus 132 plus 60. And that will be 1,464. So this is going to be OPEC, and this is going to be non-OPEC. And now all we have to do is create another bar graph. And hopefully there doesn't have to be some mathematic formula to come up with the increments here. As long as you're not doing something, absurd like, making this go up to 5,000 when the highest number we have is 1620. But we can say, okay, we have OPEC and we have non-OPEC. And for our OPEC, we have 1,620, so we're going to go all the way up to about here. And then shade that all in. Then for non-OPEC, we have 1,464. That's going to be about here. And that gives us a pretty clear understanding that, OPEC obviously has more, but the difference isn't that great. However, the increments that you decide to use are going to make a big impact on the graph itself. If we were to do this in units of 1, it would look like a much bigger separation here between this point and this point, but the entire graph itself would be much larger. And that's pretty much everything for this problem. Thank you for tuning in.